Hello, Mr. Derry. This is Gary at Totter's Lane Colour Shop. You had a look at your Type 40 TARDIS. I'll say, Mr. Derry, got to work on. You don't see many of the old ones these days. All the wood panelling, they do retro. Now, you've had a look. Quite a bit that needs doing. That's often the case for these classic models. We've changed all the fluid links. To be fair, they should have been replaced during its last service at 90 billion miles. And we've replaced all the brake pads as well, because it looks like someone's left the handbrake on all the time. And we looked at the Chameleon circuit, but unfortunately that particular circuit's really difficult to get hold of. Since the main reason you went off course though is a faulty circuit in the randomiser. We've ordered the replacement, it should be in a couple of days or so. Then we can work on your tyres and it should be ready for Wednesday last week. Alright, Mr. Hurry. Right, bye now. Hey Steve, have you finished that capsule from Mr. Saxon yet?
Who on Who? The podcast devoted to the review of classic series Doctor Who DVDs in no particular order.
Greetings, fellow Doctor Who fans, and welcome to a Back in the Driver's Seat edition of Who on Who, the podcast dedicated to the review of classic series Doctor Who DVDs in no particular order. We're your hosts, David Huey.
And I am Marty Huey.
Calling in from another time and another place, yes?
Yes, from another time zone.
Yes, for the first time now. We are not in the same room, so I have to be completely upfront and honest with you. I'm recording in my underwear because you're not in the room. I'm not really.
How is that different from usual?
Well, you know, I didn't have to put on the nice ones, you know. But no, we are excited to be back here. It is episode 29 of Who on Who, and we will be reviewing the Daleks today.
For real this time.
For real. Swear to God, we promise. But before we do that, just a couple little quick updates. Just wanted to, again, say thank you to a lot of the listener feedback and the congratulations that we got from our listeners for the exclusive that Dan Hall from To Entertain was generous enough to allow us to put out into the world. And I think it's safe to say that the Region 1 areas of the world, which I know for a fact are North America anyway, are abuzz with the news. They were quite excited. I mean, we popped up on several websites.
News traveled fast. I was impressed.
Yeah, it hit like wildfire. I think we put it out on the internet at like 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time.
No, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. You're right.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was.
Because by 11 o'clock, we were already on Wikipedia.
Yeah. Marty found us on Wikipedia. We got a mention on Nerdist.com, so thank you to them. And they were also
IGN.
They were also complimentary of our podcast, so alluding to the fact that they listen. So if you do, thank you very much for that. And you were saying what now? IGN?
IGN. We were on Doctor Who. We got a mention on the BBC America site.
And TV shows on DVD.com, another great website that I like to go to find out when things are being released. So it was kind of nice. I was chuffed with ourselves, and
I was astounded to see the podcast named on all those sites.
I know, and they spelled it right too.
Now.
Yeah, well, a little, but we didn't. And the sad thing is, we didn't really do anything. I mean, it was just we just keep doing what we're doing here, and we're just fortunate enough that Dan Hall said, "Hey, I listened to your show. Would you like an exclusive?" I mean, who's going to turn that down, right?
Exactly. We're just riding on Dan's coattails at this point.
Pretty much, and especially once we heard what the exclusive was. I mean, we were literally, just besides ourselves, excited that we were going to get to put it out there. But hey, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the good news that the 96 television movie will be out sometime within the next 12 months.
That's also exciting.
Here in Region 1 with some great special great special features on there. And it gives us yet another DVD to review when we get around to it, which will be very nice. So
I think we should do one like as soon as it comes out for that one.
Okay, all right.
I don't care if we're in the middle of a box set or anything. Just as soon as it comes out, we should do that.
Take a McGann break and just go for it.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
And I'll tell you about the DVD. I kind of want to see. You know how we were doing the strip for action, I think, in the last issue for the Sixth Doctor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to see one of those for the Eighth Doctor, because I know he had a lot of comic
it's on
adventures.
There. It's on. It's on the TV movie. Yeah, it's listed
good.
on the special features for the TV movie. There's also a commentary, and unless I'm mistaken here, there's a commentary by Paul McGann and Sylvester McCoy, which really ought to be fun. You know,
together?
Yeah, I think together. Yeah, so. That ought to be very interesting. But, well, listen, before we get into the DVD review, unless you've got anything else, I think we should go ahead and do what we like to do, and that is go to the mailbag and listen and read our listener feedback. Hold on.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
All right. We got quite a bit, actually, and as much as I stumbled over that intro to that, I promised to read a little carefully here. A couple of these came addressed to my email box, so I'm not sure, Marty, if you even got them. But
no.
This first one is from a gentleman named Luke Harrison, who he runs the Minute Doctor Who podcast, not to be confused with the 2-Minute Doctor Who podcast. It's the Minute Doctor Who podcast, which also goes by the moniker of TMDWP. It's a good little podcast, and he's a real nice guy. But he wrote in about our review of Remembrance of the Daleks, and what happened was we got the email right after we recorded the episode following Remembrance of the Daleks, which was
Invasion.
Was Invasion? Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's been sitting in my inbox. And so, Luke, I apologize. But he writes in, he says, "Hi, David and Marty. Just been catching up on with your episode on Remembrance of the Daleks and thought that I'd send in some feedback. I haven't had time to listen to all of your Invasion episode, but I just saw on Facebook that you're about to record your next episode, so I thought I'd get this in now. You're right to bring up the continuity error regarding the French Revolution book, but the color of the book is not the biggest problem with it. The more difficult question to answer is why it is even there in the first place. In An Unearthly Child, the book is taken home by Susan to read, and as she never returns to the school, you wouldn't expect it to be there." See, I'd forgotten about that.
Ooh,
see, for those of you who've forgotten, I was hung up on the fact that the actual style and color of the book that Ace picks up, even though it's about the French Revolution, is nowhere even close to the one Susan picks up, even though it was the scene itself is clearly an homage to what Susan was doing.
They could have been in a different classroom.
I guess so, or it could have been, I know school libraries often have several versions of books on the shelf, but just a bit of a coincidence that the book is there. But anyway,
it's magic.
Yeah, there you go. He goes on to say, I don't know what kind of rounders your other listeners played when they were kids, but we always played it at school with short wooden bats, probably about a third of the length of a baseball bat, and held in one hand. Unfortunately, I'm at my parents' house this weekend, so I don't have access to my books and DVDs, but I'm almost certain that Ace's bat is referred to as a baseball bat in Aronovich's novelization. Well, that's interesting. Okay. He says, so back to your original question of why Ace would be carrying a baseball bat in the first place when it's an American sport. Well, my guess would be that Ace was aware of the real origins of the game, i.e. that it was invented in the UK and evolved alongside cricket and wanted to repopularize it in the country that gave it birth. More likely, however, she just had it as a defensive weapon. After all, a baseball bat is just as effective at braining someone on either side of the Atlantic, or the planet Svartos for that matter. He says, really enjoying your reviews and looking forward to whatever you're doing in your upcoming podcast. I haven't gotten as far as your announcement of it in the Invasion one, so keep up the good work. Luke from the Minute Doctor Who podcast. Thank you, Luke. And as you know, after Invasion, we went on and did... help me out, bud. What did we do?
Oh, I think the next one was Twin Dilemma.
Yeah, it was Twin Dilemma. Yeah. I knew it was Colin Baker.
Sorry.
It was so bad I was drawing a complete blank because I was trying to wipe it from my mind. Not the podcast. I want to defend the podcast.
The podcast was quite good, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. But okay, speaking of, we did receive a complaint, which is highly unusual for us. But and I'm not tooting our horn, but we just have the nicest listening audience in the universe. So we did get an anonymous complaint about our last episode, and it reads as follows: "Hello, Hui Junior and Senior. After enjoying episode 27 Invasion DVD review, best episode since episode 4 and 7, by the way, I was looking very forward to your review of the Daleks. However, due to some horrendous blunder, Marty, I was extremely upset to hear Twin Dilemma was the topic of discussion," and he drew a little sad face. He says, for many reasons I will not go into, I've always had a dislike of this classic Who episode. For starters, the portrayal of the Doctor went from the greatness of Peter Davison to a Doctor that is mentally unstable. And what's with that jacket? Looks like Andy Warhol threw up after eating a box of Crayola. Third, the twins are amazingly annoying. Fourth, choking the ravishing companion Perry. The Doctor wants to become a hermit? Sixth, what is up with that jacket? Now, he didn't even list a fifth there. Seventh, bird people. Eighth, giant slug as the main villain. Come on. Suffice to say, your conversation of this turd of a Sixth Doctor episode was only highlighted by the amusing dialogue between the two of you. Don't get me wrong, as I enjoy Colin Baker's Doctor, it's just the earlier stuff that I find hard to stomach. Sincerely, Anonymous." Well, folks, I'm going to pull back Anonymous's mask here and let you know that came from my good buddy Steve DeStacy from the TARDIS Tavern podcast. Steve and Sean Hommerg do the TARDIS Tavern. Steve was a guest on the show for episodes 4 and 7 back in the early days of Who on Who, before I conscripted Marty into permanent co-hosting status. And but Steve, thank you. And 4 and 7 are always gems to me as well, because if I remember correctly, I think 7 we reviewed the 5 Doctors, and I really, really enjoyed that a lot with you. So keep up the good work over at the TARDIS Tavern, and thank you for the tongue-in-cheek email complaint there. But as many of you have probably figured out, we did want to have a little bit of fun on the last podcast. And I think in a certain there was a certain side of us that knew that if we blatantly came out and said, yeah, we're reviewing the Twin Dilemma, loyalty to a podcast only goes so far, and some people just wouldn't download it, you know. So you know, we had to be a little underhanded, so we beg your forgiveness for that. So,
but again, it was partially me, because I saw the Doctor Who magazine thing that said Twin Dilemma was the single worst episode of Doctor Who ever aired, and I had to see it. I had to see how bad it could possibly be. And
yeah, and you know, and we both agreed last time it's bad, but it's certainly not the worst Doctor Who we've ever seen, in our opinion, anyway. So,
in my opinion,
well, not mine too. Okay, well, let's move on here. Now, returning to the feedback at Who on Who email box, we get our first message from Rumpio of Twitter, and that's how he signed his email as well. He says, "Hello, the reason why they had animals on Blue Peter was a social thing. It was a children's program meant for all children, and they knew that some children didn't have pets or gardens because they weren't allowed children or were too poor or lived in high-rise apartments. So the show brought on pet cats, dogs, and tortoises, which the children could emotionally invest in, allowing them to write in and name the animals, for instance. They would deal with the health of the animals. If one of the dogs had puppies, it would be something else for the children to be involved with. Also, veterinary appointments, and if the animal died, it would be carefully explained to children as to not to upset them, but prepare them for the facts of life. The same thing happened with the Blue Peter garden. It was there so children knew what it was like to have a garden. Hope this helps." Well, thank you, Rumpio. That does help a lot, because it's
actually very nice.
Yeah, we were talking about the long-standing relationship between Blue Peter and Doctor Who, and one of us posed the question as to why there were animals in the...
It was either me or it was just both of us, I think.
And I knew that there had always been animals there, but I wasn't exactly sure what the history was behind that or why they did it. So that explains it. So thank you very much again. Okay, this next email comes from Brian Burkhart. He writes in and says, "Hello, Hooies. I've been a bit busy, so I fell behind in my listening to the podcast, and now that I'm up to date..." Wait, you just posted episode 28. Oh, I promise not to fall behind again. Figure I would share some thoughts. Remembrance of the Daleks is one of my favorite episodes. I have very clear memories of watching it for the first time. My friends and I were big fans of the show, so we were very excited of the new season premiering on NJN, a local PBS station that was a big supporter of Doctor Who. They brought in Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred for a convention/fundraiser and produced a making-of special that was later issued on the Silver Nemesis VHS. NJN showed the 4 episodes edited into one movie every Saturday night at 9. We were 4 19-year-old guys sitting in a friend's basement, geeking out while our girlfriends sat at the other end of the room, shaking their heads in disbelief. I think 2 of us were dumped that very night. But a new episode of Doctor Who was so worth it. Plus, the Target novelization is one of the best in the entire line. Brian, I got to stop and say, you're geeking out and you have a girlfriend. You're one up on most of us at the time, and so you must be a good-looking guy. That's all I got to say. So anyway, he goes on to say, Time Warrior holds a special place in my heart. Not only is it a great episode, it was one of the few episodes I was able to watch numerous times. Way back in the mid-'80s, my family only had one VCR, and it was hooked up to the television in the living room, so I couldn't tape the NJN airings on Saturday night. Luckily, in Philadelphia, we also got the feed for the Delaware PBS station. They showed a complete story on Saturday afternoons at 4. I could tape these so long as there wasn't a sporting event on that my dad wanted to watch. My collection of Doctor Who tapes was quite the hodgepodge as a result. I remember that Time Warrior was on a tape with the Green Death and Terror of the Zygons. VHS tapes cost about $7 each, and that put a limit on my purchasing power as my paper route money had to stretch to include movies and comic books. Great interview with Daniel Hall in episode 27. I'm always interested to know about the inner workings of media, and it was good to hear that my hometown of Philadelphia had some small part to play in the rekindling of his passion for the show. Episode 27 was your bumper edition, clocking in at near Podshock length. One quick thought on merchandise. For my recent 40th birthday, I treated myself to the 11 Doctors action figure set, and I cannot recommend this highly enough. This set is a dream come true for fans. My wife and I just started watching the show from the beginning. She's seen a fair amount of the classic series, but we figured this is a great way to catch her up. Luckily, I've kept up with my DVD purchases and have the old Warner VHS tapes for the episodes not yet released on DVD. We watch one 23-minute episode a night, Monday through Friday. We just started episode 1 of The Aztecs, so the journey's just begun. Thanks again for your work at providing us listeners with great content, and I look forward to seeing both of you at Gallifrey. Brian Burkhart. Brian, I look forward to seeing you too. And that's pretty cool. One 23-minute episode a night. You think your mom would go for that? No.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
I was trying to do the math on that. Like 123 episode a night. That would take quite a while to get through.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's too bad, but it's okay. It still allows me to have this as my own thing, and she does whatever it is that she does. So actually, she runs. For those of you that are interested, she's a runner. So while she's out getting healthy, I'm sitting on the couch eating crunchy Cheetos and watching Doctor Who. Yeah,
sounds like my daily life now.
Match made in heaven. Yeah, I know. All right. Next one comes from Graham Sheridan. Hi, guys. The thing with the email was after you... The thing with the email... Oh, yeah. Remember, Graham wrote in last time and said something about us missing his email or something like that. And he said the thing with the email was after you changed your whole contact email, and David, you said you'd only read out from email received on the feedback address. So a few points or 5. 1, Big Finish have released a 4-part trilogy of Jamie and the Sixth Doctor. 3 main range releases and a companion chronicle. Part 4 is called Legend of the Cybermen, and it also stars Zoe. Oh, that's cool. Number 2, Peter Purvis, who played Steven, was in Blue Peter up until about 1980. Number 3, the suit that the Sixth Doctor transforms into at the end of the 100 Years Younger is the master suit from Perry's first outing in Planet of Fire. So to my last point, I would always go out on a limb and say that I rate the Twin Dilemma over the New Who End of Time, as the Twin Dilemma didn't cause me at any time to quite literally swear at my TV in frustration the same way that the End of Time did. All the best for now, your pal in podcasting, Graham, the second Dr. Sheridan. Graham, I got to agree with you a little bit. Now, I did like the End of Time, but certainly not my favorite Doctor Who by any stretch.
No.
And the 10th Doctor falling through a skylight and not dying at that point, still didn't quite understand that one.
It's impossible.
So, yeah, I don't get it.
But we won't get into that.
Yeah, we did get a quick shout out from Hamish Scott, who just emailed in to clarify that the correct pronunciation of his name is Hamish Scott. So Hamish, thank you very much for that. Next time you write in, I will not mangle your name. I promise. I will remember that one. And it's a Scottish name too, so you get bonus points for that because Hui is also a Scottish name. Next one comes from Wildstar. Wildstar says, I meant to send an email regarding a review of The Invasion, but I just never found around to it. In regard to everyone's favorite Lackey Packer, say it for me, Marty. There we go. I like to think that we get to see his great-grandfather doing the same job in City of Death, in which Peter Halliday this time plays the lackey of Captain Tancredi, a.k.a. Scaroth, Last of the Jagroth, in 16th century Italy. We never get his name in the story, so I'd like to think that it's... Say it again, Marty. Thank you. But now, back to the present with the Twin Dilemma. I've only seen this episode once, and that was when it first aired. Your review, along with my bitter memories, don't leave me inclined to pick the DVD up anytime soon. I'll get it eventually, but not anytime soon. David mentioned that the twins appear to be playing Space Invaders to represent their math games, which reminded me of the fact that in Caves of Androzani, the story preceding Twin Dilemma, the villain Sherzhek has a view screen of the mine system in his headquarters, and it's actually just the game Dig Dug. Yes, I noticed that. Oh, yes, Wildstar. Good call out there. Yeah, I did notice that, too. He says, I guess the effects department must have gotten a hold of a Commodore 64, but didn't know how to program it. I think they had an Atari 2600, buddy, and I think what they did was just put the cartridge in and leave it on demo mode. But anyway, he says, like David, I was also a big Perry fan, primarily due to her attractiveness. David mentioned that he felt she was never properly developed as a character, and I have to strongly disagree, but only sort of. Interesting, okay. Perry was very well crafted for her premiere in Caves of Androzani. For her premiere, he says here in Caves of Androzani, but I think he means Planet of Fire. She was strong-willed and passionate, had the makings of a great companion. Then the writers seemed to decide that if the Doctor could undergo a complete change of personality, there's no reason why she shouldn't do the same thing. The Perry we see from the Twin Dilemma onward is a whiny thing who's only there to scream for help or complain. When it comes to John Nathan Turner needing to leave Doctor Who at the end of Peter Davison's era, I couldn't agree more. From everything I've read over the years, JNT himself would also agree, and fully intended to do so at the time. As you may know, the show was already in trouble at that point. The BBC's head, Michael Grade, who took over the network the year before, hated Doctor Who and was just looking for an excuse to cancel it. Many of the stories I've read suggest that Grade had informed JNT that if he left the show, it would simply be canceled rather than just replacing him, and that he would not be able to find other work on the BBC either. This is the only reason he stuck around at all, despite the fact that he didn't want to be there anymore. By the time of the chaos of the dismissal of Colin Baker, nobody wanted to go anywhere near the executive producer job on Doctor Who, so he was still trapped. That's all I've got for this month. You guys are great, so keep it up, Wildstar. Thank you, Wildstar, and thank you for the insight there into JNT. That does make a little bit of sense. I think I had heard that before, but had kind of slipped my mind there, and maybe I was being a little critical. No, I don't think I was. I still think that the costume was a really bad idea. I mean, even if you don't like your job and you want out, you're not going to impress folks by making decisions like that, at least in my opinion. So anyway, next one comes...
Unless he was trying to get fired, but...
Well, yeah, but
can't imagine.
I don't know. As your father, let me just tell you, okay, real fast off the record here in front of hundreds of people.
All these people.
Don't ever line yourself up to get fired unless you have another job waiting. All right?
Right.
All right, there we go.
Well,
good.
I know that.
All right, good. That makes me sleep better at night. All right, next one comes from Dave Jones. Dave says, guys, another great podcast despite the last-minute detour. I always enjoy your observations on the episodes you review. However, I was intrigued by your statement that Nicola Bryant's performance was underdeveloped. I have heard a lot of adjectives associated with Ms. Bryant, but underdeveloped is not one of them. She strikes me as overdeveloped. Yeah, buddy. Seriously, one bit of trivia that you may not have been aware of, the Fifth Doctor costume that Colin Baker wears at the start of the episode, obviously tailored to accommodate Colin's slightly larger frame, was reused during the filming of Time Crash by Peter Davison to accommodate his slightly expanding frame. Yeah, I saw the Confidential after Time Crash, and I think that Davison was the first one to mention that. He says, I want to wish Marty good luck at college. I hope you have an enriching experience stepping outside the safety of the nest. David, I also want to wish you luck with all that redecorating work you and your wife will be doing, boxing up Marty's stuff and repurposing his room as exercise room or billiards room or entertainment room. Oops, Marty wasn't supposed to hear about that. Sorry. Spilling the beans.
I actually already knew about that.
Yeah, he knew about it. Anyway, looking forward to your next review. Dave Jones in Dumfries, Virginia. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, quick side note. Just want to brag on Marty for a minute. He packed up everything and carried everything up from his room, which was down here in the subterranean level of the mothership. And so we just literally helped him load his vehicle, and that's that.
And that was a scary trip. That was a scary trip up.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't use my rearview mirror at all.
Yeah, that is a little scary, and thank you for not telling me at the time. But now that you're there, I guess it's okay. But but yeah, it's and we have repurposed Marty's room as a playroom / guest room for people to come. What we did was we got a futon and put it down there, and so that can be folded out into a double bed, or when it's not, then all the other siblings can run around in there and watch TV and play on the computer, do blah blah blah. Excuse me, do different things. So anyway, but Marty knew about that. Okay, here we go. Kyle Anderson. Oh, this is Kyle from Los Angeles. Yeah. Okay, he says, "Hello, David and Marty. Another fantastically entertaining episode. I also think Twin Dilemma is unfairly maligned. It's by far not the best episode, but it's not the worst either. The plot and effects are pretty terrible, but as a first episode, I think Colin Baker does a really great job. I didn't hate him nearly as much as I expected. I guess that isn't really a rousing endorsement. I was just thinking that, Kyle. Like, wow, yeah, that's a way to pump him up there.
Well, I didn't hate it.
But but great podcast all the same. As always, looking forward to the next episode, and thanks for reading my email. Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for sending the email in. And I agree with you. I think Colin Baker hit it out of the park. As an actor, the character of the Doctor was not very likable, but I certainly don't think that should be, that Colin Baker should be faulted for that. So in that episode. Okay, next one comes from Randall Thomas. He writes in about Who on Who, episode 27, the Invasion review, and the To Entertain interview with Dan Hall. Says, hello, David and Marty. First, I'd like to begin by saying, Bagger. Boy, they like that, man. They're clinging on to that. We're trying to get the guys, Dave and Mike Kingley, down in the Titanium Bunker to put up a Packer T-shirt with.
I think it would sell.
Yeah, I do
personally.
too. I really do. And so we were talking to Dave about drawing Tobias Vaughn's face with a word balloon that just says Packer. And I think that a lot of folks would grab. I know I'd buy one. So
I would get one. I'd get two so I could wear one while I was washing the other.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's smart. Anyway, he says, I really enjoyed your review of The Invasion. This is one of my favorite Troughton stories, and I too was very impressed by the animation used to fill in the missing episodes of the story. I really do wish and hope and pray, and I think you get the idea, that To Entertain and the BBC would use the same idea to complete other stories that we're missing, such as 10th Planet. 10th Planet would be ideal for this treatment since there is only one missing episode from that story. Or at least I've been given the impression that is the case based on what I heard and read on the subject. Paca, oops, I'm so sorry. He did it again. Listening to 2 Entertain interview with Daniel Hall now, hoping they consider to do another animated completion. Fingers crossed for 10th Planet. Would love to see a Blu-ray release for Spearhead from Space. The Brigadier skit at Gallifrey 21 was priceless because he shoots everything. Brilliant. What about, that about wraps up feedback on this episode. Love the show. And in closing, I can only say, Marty, do it for me. There we go. Cheers, guys, from Randall Thomas. Cheers, Randall. Thank you. And listen, just real quick, I don't remember if this was included in the interview. Shame on me. But we did talk a little bit about animation, but we could only really talk about it in a very vague sense because, while Daniel admitted that, as Doctor Who fans, all of them over at 2 Entertain are equally as, thrilled with the idea as we are, they also have to deal with the reality of finances. And in that, I kind of learned a little thing there because I brought up 10th Planet. I said, well, come on, it's one episode. The rest of it's done. All you have to do is one episode. And Dan pointed out that would actually be more expensive to do than getting an animation team in to do, say, like an entire lost story. And, you're trying to fund it and all that. So that was an eye opener for me. I mean, because, I looked at it like, okay, they're going to charge you X amount per episode. But, he sort of explained the new math, I guess I don't know. It's kind of the financial math behind it. And, so I kind of understand where they're coming from. And, I'm sure, like I said in the interview, as Doctor Who fans, they would love to do it just as much as we would, but, and see it happen. But, they also have to deal with the realities of finances and everything else. Right. So whether or not it'll happen, well, it remains to be seen. But all I can say for those of you out there that are listening, if you're ever on the fence about especially folks here in America, if you're ever on the fence about whether to buy a Doctor Who DVD or rent a Doctor Who DVD, I would say wait until you have the money and buy it. Because as Doctor Who fans, the only influence we have on 2 Entertain is to give them our money and do that by purchasing these DVDs as they come out. That doesn't mean I'm asking you to not feed your family or not be responsible with your money. But if it's a toss-up between the new Mega Super Lost box set that's got every episode and 5,000 alternate endings that still aren't going to make any more sense than the other one, or 2 Doctor Who DVDs, support 2 Entertain, support BBC, buy the 2 Entertain, buy the Doctor Who DVDs, because that money gets back to them and they see that there's support out there. Okay, and that's actually, that's true worldwide, but it's a tougher sell over here than it is over in the UK. I think they sell much better over there. Christmas is coming up. Put it on your Christmas list. If you so celebrate. Hanukkah's coming up. If you're Jewish, put it on your Hanukkah list. I mean, you got 8 days in Hanukkah, isn't it? 8, yeah. So you could get 8 DVDs. Yeah, there you go. There you go. 1 DVD per day. I mean, yeah, it'd be a little predictable, but still, I'd be a blast if you're a Doctor Who fan. All right, last email comes from Mark Nuttall, of course.
Hey, of course.
Mark says, gentlemen, look, do I really have to start each email by saying how good your show is? Can we just take it as read that it's a terrific show and I enjoy the presentation? No. Yeah.
No, you have to every time.
Yes, Marty and I are that needy, and we really do need you to step up there and praise us because, yeah, we're needy. Okay. Anyway, he says, you bowled us a googly, or in your language, threw us a curveball. I can only think that you felt that if you were going to tell us you were going to do Twin Dilemma, that we would switch off. Where do I begin with this story? Well, firstly, I do agree that Colin Baker makes the best of a bad job. He was very badly served by the TV series, and we should be thankful that he has stuck with it and proved himself such a good doctor in Big Finish, and also proved himself such a great great friend and champion of the series. Amen. I agree completely. That's the good bit over. Okay, now this is just cheap and nasty. Now I have no problem with cheap Doctor Who. Is great. Doctor Who's great at being cheap, but this does no justice at all. Use twins by all means, but please find twins who can act or have at least heard of acting. Hugo gets shot down. They take him into the TARDIS. They hide the energy pod for his gun inside this infinitely large space, and he just finds it in 2 minutes. Also, the jacket he chooses is almost as bad as the Doctor's. The Jacondans have no character at all. They could be cardboard cutouts for the depth of characterization that they are given, which is a shame as they look okay. Which is more than can be said for Messer. He would look convincing on Teletubbies or Barney the dinosaur. This was a massive mistake to have this at the end of the season because we were left with a Doctor that we didn't like, who we wouldn't see again for months. I think this went a long way to causing Colin Baker's eventual sacking, and the tragedy was that it wasn't his fault. And I agree with you there, Mark. I thought that your 2.5 rating was extremely generous, given the damage that this story did to the show. Anyway, enough ranting. I'm looking forward to this answer phone thingy on the website. These Hingley boys have done a brilliant job. Have you come across the DWMR or Doctor Who media review? It's at http://tv.groups.yahoo.com/group/DWMR. It's a Yahoo user group, and each month they review one DVD, one novelization, which is available as a PDF, and a few Big Finish stories. Then everyone simply posts their reviews, and at the end of each month, they have a poll of the stories. It's a great idea and a good way to go through the old DVD collection. You simply watch or read or listen to what you want and give an opinion. Nice, friendly bunch of people as well. Anyway, keep up the good work. Regards, Mark Nuttall. Mark, thank you for the information on that. That's great. It sounds like they're doing a little about what we do and probably doing it better than we do and doing a little more than we do. But I think that's cool. So, well, that's awesome. I'll have to check out that website. And let's see, on to his... any of his other points there. I don't think we were being overly generous with our 2.5s. I do want to point out that, well, first of all, it's not an exact science. I mean, we don't have any sort of rubric here or tables or any sort of, theorems and things that...
I have a dartboard set up over my desk that just has numbers on it. I just kind of throw a dart at it. Whenever it lands on, that's what I rate the story.
I have a little a miniaturized version of that carnival game with the floating ducks that have numbers under them. And I just reach in and grab one, pull it out, whatever's in the bottom of the duck. That's what I'm going with. But, yeah, similar idea. Actually, though, in all fairness, yes, Twin Dilemma did do a lot of damage to Doctor Who. It certainly didn't help the situation. It probably exacerbated things a little bit. Well, maybe a lot. But I'm not going to give it a bad review or a lower score because of that, because this is really about sitting down and watching the DVD now, not what it did, back then, number one. Number two, our review also has to sort of take into account not only the story, but even though we haven't covered extras yet, extras tend to factor into the points that I'm going to give a DVD, because if the extras are kind of, paltry, that's going to make a difference to me, even when I'm reviewing the story. So if there's ever been any misunderstanding there, I apologize, but it's not always just when I give it, say, a 4 out of 5, it's not just based on the story, it's also based on other content that's on the disc. So
it's a little different for me. I don't judge I actually rate the story before I look at the extras on the disc, because I'm going strictly on story.
Oh, okay. Well,
and how it was presented, how the costumes were done, how the effects were done, and also if it could hold my interest. Because, as I've said before, I'm a child of the new series, so I'm used to things wrapping up in an hour. Mm-hmm. So if the story doesn't hold my interest for 2 hours, then it's going to lose some points.
Right. Okay. Well, and I think maybe I'm making that sound more than it is. My reviews are probably more story based than I care to admit, but it definitely factors in. I mean, you know, I can tell you for a fact that I've given other discs, I've bumped it up a half a point or even a point if I thought it had some really cool extras on it. So there you go. Okay, well,
all right.
I think that's about it for listener feedback.
We're done with the mountain of email now?
We're done with the mountain of email. We have killed yet another tree. Go green. We are now well, actually, I'll tell you what, before we take off here, because I do want to check a couple things here before I fire this bad boy up. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be right back after this announcement from Professor Dave's Ark in Space. Hold on.
Okay, so I said that you could come on the Ark. I did not say that your friend could come on the Ark.
But we have lots of space, and it's just Danielle.
You know, I don't know really anything about podcasting. I'd have to go buy a microphone with a headset, and I never check my Facebook. And I bet if I tended to lean, the sound would go out, and people might complain. And what if no one likes me? I mean, I could get stage fright or something. I mean, you wouldn't want me to have an asthma squirrel?
Professor Dave's Ark in Space, available on iTunes, Libsyn, and Zoom.
And your mom. You should put that in there.
Okay, well, love that podcast and love Professor Dave's Ark in Space. So those of you who have never given that a tumble, you need to give that one a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. I know, folks, I know you're sitting there kind of rolling your eyes thinking, there's got to be 1,000 Doctor Who podcasts out there. And honestly, I genuinely say this. I feel guilty because I hear about it seems like I hear about a new Doctor Who podcast almost once a week. And I feel terrible because there's just not enough time in the day to listen to all of them. But I try to give each one a fair listen just to see what they're offering, what they're doing. At least that way I can, let our listeners know that, hey, there's a show out there. If you haven't heard of it, give it a shot. But Professor Dave's is a lot of fun. So, please give them a listen. All right, let's go ahead and get these TARDIS controls set here.
Okay.
Get your hand off of that. December 21st, 1963. We're going to go to Skaro and visit the Daleks. Hold on, here we go. We are here. This is the second ever Doctor Who adventure, The Daleks. A 7-part story with, obviously with the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, Susan, the, quote, crowded TARDIS, but somehow never seems crowded in this era of the show. This is the ultimate rebuttal to those who are real critical of 80s Doctor Who with Peter Davison, and they say, crowded TARDIS. That's a bunch of nonsense because, you look at this.
The show started off with 4 people in the TARDIS.
Yeah, and they did fine. I mean, it was actually 2 guys and 2 gals, and, I think it worked out very well. Of course, the dynamic is a little bit different, but anyway, this, I guess this is normally where I tell people who wrote the story. If you don't know that Terry Nation wrote the Daleks, I want you to pause this podcast and slap yourself hard across the face and then come back, okay?
Well, wait.
Yeah, and we're back. All right, no, it was directed by Christopher Barry, and one of the things I like about it, I was going to ask you about this, Marty, because we don't talk a lot of, I don't remember now if the Troughton episodes do this, but the Hartnell episodes, they have a title for every serial, for every chapter in the story. You know what I mean?
No. The Troughton episodes that I've seen.
Yeah, I don't think they did. And I was going to ask you.
I think it might come up and say like War Games part, whatever.
Right.
Because I think they, or at least like it'll come up and say War Games or whatever. But I think they did that well into the Pertwee era.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't.
'Cause I remember watching Inferno and it would come up and do that.
Yeah, but I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember them changing titles though. Like, I mean, for instance, on this one, episode 1 of the Daleks, or part 1 of the Daleks, is called The Dead Planet.
Yeah.
So what we find is the TARDIS has landed, and this happens actually at the end of Unearthly Child. The TARDIS lands here on what we will find out later is the planet Skaro. The doctor asks Susan to check the radiation levels. She checks them. They all read fine. Yet as soon as she walks away, that needle on the Geiger counter or whatever it is goes way up into the danger zone. So we, the viewer, know that there's potential radiation danger out there. They go out to investigate and discover basically a land that is almost completely petrified. The trees. There's no vegetation. There's no sound. There's no animals. It is literally a dead planet. They go. I'm trying to think now. Is it before they go out there that they get something to eat?
No. They go out and inspect the forest, and I think it goes so far as like they get to the cliff where they see the city.
That's right.
And then they decide to go back.
Right.
To the
they
TARDIS.
decide to go back and wait till first light. And they're trying to talk the doctor out of it. He wants desperately to go investigate this city that they see because it's very futuristic looking and all that sort of thing. So they go back to the TARDIS, and the doctor, they're complaining about being hungry, and so the doctor goes ahead and shows them the food dispenser machine, and creates basically a food bar that tastes like bacon and eggs for Ian and Barbara. And very interesting. It's the first time that we've seen how they eat on the TARDIS.
Yeah, I wonder if that remained constant though.
What?
Like if they well, you never see him eat again in the show. I'm just wondering if eventually he said, forget that. We'll just put a refrigerator in.
Well, I think that we can assume that there's something like that still on board the TARDIS, even though it's not shown. It sort of goes along the lines of you never see people stop to use the bathroom or use the loo, right, for our listeners over in the UK, because there's no high drama in that. Nobody needs to see you stop and, take a whiz before you go and save the world. So they sort of cut all that out. That's just sort of assumed. We don't see them sleeping. We don't see, just your regular day-to-day routine stuff. But this gives us a little insight as to some of the other capacities of the TARDIS, the things that are on board, and what they can do there. So I thought that was kind of neat. The Doctor actually sabotages the TARDIS. He takes out the fluid link, and then when they go to take off, they cannot take off. The Doctor claims that the fluid link is missing mercury, and apparently their only choice now is to go to the city and look for a laboratory where they can find some mercury for the fluid link. I was a little surprised by this. Now, I've seen this story before, so of course I knew he did this, but
right.
It's always nice to watch again as a little bit of a refresher. This old codger goes and sabotages the TARDIS just so he can get his way.
Uh-huh.
And, at first blush, you look at that and you go, that's awful selfish of him. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, in many ways, it's awful immature of him. And what?
Yeah, because this is the youngest.
Exactly. See, while he appears to be physically the oldest that we will ever see him, he is definitely the youngest that we've ever seen him. So yeah, it's very immature and something that in later incarnations he will not do. So yeah, I was a little put off by that. Then we move on to part 2, which is called The Survivors. And let me before we go there, let's talk a little bit about the first ever cliffhanger here when they get to the city and they split up. God knows why.
Yeah.
Why do people do that? All right, we're in a strange city on an alien planet. Let's split up. We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. That sounds good. Folks, safe.
It's the Scooby-Doo thing.
Safety in numbers, people. Stay together. In case you all have
Let's go
to
into
jam.
this creepy haunted house, and me and Daphne will go this way while you and Scooby go that way.
Exactly. You know who's going to find the ghost. Zoinks. Anyway, so Barbara goes off on her own, and Barbara encounters.
Which that's kind of weird in itself. I don't remember if it was like, how did they split up exactly? Was it just the Doctor and Susan and then Ian and Barbara, or did the three of them go off somewhere and just say, Barbara, you go down that hallway?
No, yeah. Ian went off one way, Doctor and Susan went off another way, and I think Barbara went off a third way. I think they had three options.
Oh, okay.
They're certainly not going to let Susan go off on her own because she's a child. So,
well, yeah.
But, of course, they end up having to do that later when they have to send her back to the ship. But that's we'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll get to that. I wanted to actually touch on the fact that at the beginning they were coming off of Unearthly Child.
Yeah.
Because I know they did this for some of the Troughton stories, but we don't actually see that again until the new series this past season.
Yeah. There's definitely a tie-in. There's no inferred space in between the stories where you could imagine for a minute that maybe they had other adventures that we didn't see.
Right, and I don't know how long they actually did that for. If they just did that on and off, or if it was like a constant thing.
I don't know.
Up until...
I think it was more constant with the first Doctor, and I think it sort of started to, of course we saw that too with the Invasion. It comes right after Mind Robber,
right.
So
which I still haven't watched.
Yeah, shame on you. But anyway, let's go back to this interesting note of trivia for folks out there. One or two of you who may not know this. At the first cliffhanger is Barbara pressed up against a wall with a plunger. With the Daleks plunger attachment, coming toward her. There was no Dalek. The Daleks weren't built yet when that was filmed.
Really?
Yeah. So that was actually a stage crew member holding a plunger attachment. And
I wonder if they just worked backwards. If they were like, what should we threaten her with? Well, we've got this grippy arm, or we've got this gun and a plunger.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just threaten her with that. We'll build something.
I think that they already had the design for the Daleks. They just didn't have them finished yet. So they
right.
But I thought that was very effective because you can imagine that as a serialized weekly thing. You're sitting there, and then all of a sudden at the end, it's like, oh my gosh, what is that? So you're definitely going to tune in, and see what's going on the following week.
Which actually, I had something kind of on that point written down. Just from the new series, pretty much every companion, when he's taken them to another planet, they've been like really excited about it. Like, I'm standing on another planet. This is so big. But the first time anybody goes off-world in this entire show, nobody seems to care.
Oh, no. I think Barbara was freaked out. I mean...
Was she? I didn't notice anything. It just seemed like they walked out of the TARDIS and just...
No. There was a scene between Barbara and Ian where she was terrified, and she asked Ian, how he could not be scared. He said, I am scared, but we really don't have any choice right now. And
man, I do not remember that. I didn't write that.
It took place right outside of the TARDIS, and all Barbara wanted to do is go back in the TARDIS. That's all she wanted to do. She didn't really want to have to go on and do any of this. So
maybe it was just that nobody mentioned, like nobody in that conversation mentioned that they were on another planet. It was just she was scared of the forest or something.
Well, no, because at one point she asked the Doctor if they were indeed on another world. When they saw the metal lizard thing.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think she realized that they weren't on Earth. And she asked the Doctor about it, and he confirmed. He said, yes, we're on a different world. So
I completely missed that.
But, that brings up another point when we talk about Susan, about how freaked out Susan was to go back to the TARDIS alone, yet any other female companion that age would have said, all right, I'm going. Ace would have gone and blown up anything that got in her way.
Ace was tough though.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think Ace was a bit older than Susan too.
Well, I don't think in real life. No.
How old? Well, no, not in real life. I'm saying just in the show's continuity.
Yeah, possibly.
I don't know how old Susan actually was.
Well, she was still in high school, so.
So she was anywhere from 14 to 18.
Yeah, I would say probably closer to 18. I mean, Carol Ann Ford had children or had a child already.
At that point,
yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, because she talks about it on the commentary about one of her kids coming down and sitting in the Dalek, so, or her child anyway. But anyway, so part 2 is called The Survivors. We find out that the heroes, they all end up being prisoners of the Daleks together in a room and find out that they have all gotten radiation poisoning. And the doctor deduces that something that was left for them outside the TARDIS by an unseen person / entity is actually the drugs they need to survive the radiation. So Susan is quickly chosen to go because she doesn't seem to be as affected as everybody else. And she has to go out alone to get it. And I wrote it, she is so scared, and I underlined so. Well,
I mean, she's been under the Doctor's protection for most of her life, you figure. Well, and even, I mean, she, on an unfamiliar world with all these people threatening her, pushes her out the door, go back across this mountain, get this stuff. It's like, I think they said it was a day's journey from the city to the TARDIS.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand it in that regard because she's on a strange world. But of all the people there except the Doctor, she's the only one that's ever been on other planets. She's definitely got more experience traveling around than Ian and Barbara do. And yet, if Ian's legs weren't paralyzed from the Dalek, he would have gone. And he would have said, I'm going.
Which also, that's another thing. He was the first person to get shot by a Dalek gun in the show.
He didn't get killed. See, he was a bad.
Didn't get killed. So that was a little strange. Because, as being a child of the new series, I saw that and I thought, no, they're not killing off Ian. What's going on there?
But yeah, he does get shot. They paralyze him and they tell him the next time they shoot him, they'll kill him. So he can't walk when they first all get back together again. So that's why he does not go. And, the Daleks won't give him time to go get it. Now, the Daleks are interested in the radiation, anti-radiation stuff too, because they want to figure out why the Thals that they talk about as their enemies have been able to survive the radiation and they haven't. They've been trapped in the city. And of course are now encased in their Dalek armor. So anyway, we'll move on in the story. Basically, Susan makes it. She brings back the medicine, but when she gets to the TARDIS, she actually meets the head or one of the heads of the Thals. And I'm so bad about writing character names down, and I meant to do this. And I don't remember the guy's name now. And people are yelling at me. I know. But
it's weird. In the first 4 parts of the story, I was too distracted by how good the story was to actually write a whole lot of notes. Mm-hmm. So I didn't write it either. The only thing I wrote down for part 3 was that the Daleks called the Thals mutants before you ever see them. Yes. And then you see them and they look very normal. Very handsome, human-like. And I actually wrote down mutants aren't very mutant. And then later on I put an asterisk next to that and said it's probably because of the Daleks' xenophobia. Yeah,
it probably is. That's a good point. But yeah.
Because they're very anti-anything that isn't Dalek.
Yes. And basically what we find out in a nutshell here for all Doctor Who fans is that this is the first story that establishes the war between the Daleks and the Thals. It establishes the fact that the Daleks are not interested in cohabitating with anybody. They're just going to kill anything that's not Dalek. And our heroes end up having to fight the Daleks by convincing the Thals, who are peace-loving people, that they're going to have to fight. Now, the Thals were originally warriors, But over time, they gave all that up. So Ian really has to push the issue with them to get them to the point where they will fight, fight the Daleks. And there's some great stuff back and forth with some of the Thal people that die through the course of this mission to get the fluid link back from so that the heroes can leave in the TARDIS.
Doesn't the fluid link lose its mercury though? Like for real at one point?
It doesn't need mercury. What happens is when Ian was captured and confiscated by the Daleks, they stole it.
That's right.
So they had to go back and actually get it.
So the Doctor's immaturity really did get them stuck on that planet.
Yeah, it really did. And Ian calls him out on it at one point, and it's very interesting. But the Daleks, it sort of culminates in the fact that the Daleks get the anti-radiation drug from the Thals, and they try it, and it drives a whole faction of Daleks crazy. It kills them. So what they decide is what they actually need is more radiation. So they decide that they're going to detonate another neutron bomb on the planet for their benefit. So that's when the Thals agree to help fight back against the Daleks. And essentially we do see the Thals victorious at the end. We see the Daleks defeated, and we see the heroes move on. But there are some points to this story that I think are very important to bring up. Number one, aside from it being the first Dalek story, like you said, the atmosphere is very good. It's very easy to get lost in this story.
The first half actually, part 5 to part 7, I didn't care for as much actually.
Well, by that point, because it's a 7-part story, the writers have, or in this case, the writer has gone out of his way to come up with reasons for them to get captured, to escape, to get recaptured, to escape again, to go back here, to go back there. It gets a little repetitious. And like with most really long Doctor Who serials, I typically say they could cut this thing in half. If they cut this down to a 4-parter, which they could easily do, and trim some of the fat off of this, it would be a phenomenal story.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did like, though, at the end of part 7, I wrote this down. They kind of RTD'd the Daleks at the end because they killed all of them, quote unquote.
Yes.
And I wrote down, I'm sure we'll never see those guys again.
Yeah, really. Here's what's interesting. I found this out by watching the info text, okay, while I was listening to the commentary, is that while this story started out with relatively low numbers, like I want to say I think it was 4.5 million viewers for the very first part. By the time they got to part 7, they were pulling over 10 million viewers.
Wow.
So this is the effect that the Daleks had on Doctor Who. So when you're sitting around chatting with other Doctor Who fans and somebody brings the point up that, hey, if it wasn't for the success of this story, we probably wouldn't be talking Doctor Who to this day, they're absolutely correct. This story would not have survived. It wouldn't have or this series wouldn't have survived up to the point where, 3 years later, when Hartnell's health was failing him, they were willing to give it a shot and regenerate him into a different actor. While we owe a lot to Patrick Troughton for taking the baton and being successful after the fact, we owe more to the Daleks for keeping Doctor Who in the public eye and making them as popular as they were. So,
right.
I've heard about Dalek Mania and I've read about Dalek Mania, but you see it here. You basically see the birth of Dalek Mania when you watch this, and it's very impressive. So,
oh yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to add about the story? Any other points in the story that you said you took a lot of notes, and I don't want to.
Well, I didn't take a lot of notes. Let me see. I took more notes on the first 4 parts, and then after a while I thought, there's really nothing else I can add to this. There was one point in part 5, though, when they were crossing, I think it was like the marshes or something, and it was very obvious that like Susan and Barbara got attacked by some stock footage of a grasshopper or something. I don't know if you remember that or not. I thought it was funny because it was kind of campy.
Yeah.
What else did I put down here? I was also just gonna kind of touch on the fact that the Doctor is very grumpy, kind of just jerkish in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because it's early on, and
yeah, it's early on, but still they wrote him as kind of like this mean guy in the very beginning.
Yeah, well, and you'll see throughout the course of Hartnell's portrayal of the Doctor that he softens, as he goes.
I think it's the next Dalek story. I don't know I think the next one was Dalek Invasion of Earth that they were in, and he's totally different.
Yeah, when he says goodbye to Susan, but even if you go back and like watch the Aztecs, which comes obviously later than this, he's mellowed some more. He and especially his relationship with Ian. It changes. He becomes less disdainful toward Ian and more appreciative of his role, in their adventures.
Right.
So, it's definitely, definitely a change as he goes along. Very similar to what Colin Baker attempted to do by starting out, very brusque and abrasive.
Coarse
But then his legs got cut out from under him. But that's that's a discussion.
Also, also in part 4, you actually see the first Dalek murder. The first time, a Dalek kills anybody.
Yes, and was it part 4 where they incapacitated the Dalek guard and pulled him out of the shell?
I think it was part 3.
Was that part
where
3?
They incapacitated him and actually took him out of the
Yeah,
thing.
they wrapped him up in the tarp and pulled him out, so you didn't get to see him. I thought that was really effective. And then all you see is this thing partially crawling out from under the tarp at the end.
Well, you see the hand come out, but Dalek dies because he can't survive outside of its shell.
But very spooky, very clever. It goes back to that whole discussion of doing a lot with a very little bit. Sometimes
I think Doctor Who always thrived.
Oh
on
yeah,
that,
sure
though,
they did. Yeah,
doing a lot with practically nothing. Even the cliffhanger for part 2, nothing really happens. Susan gets back into the TARDIS and gets the anti-radiation thing, and then turns around and really doesn't want to leave, but she still opens the doors and it's storming and it's very ugly and scary outside. And I kind of felt that. So I was a little creeped out.
Oh yeah, the lighting and that scene where she has to run through the forest and somebody's after her kind of thing. The way they lit that was just really well done, and the fact that they're in a studio, so they've got a limited amount of space, and they have to make it really look big. And sure, there's that close-up shot of her running where you can pretty much tell they're just rotating the background behind her or whatever. It's kind of silly, but I think they did a really good job with that. So I think this was shot very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll agree with that. But I really didn't have any other points other than that.
Okay.
Pretty much made everything I wanted to.
All right. Well,
so, did you have any points you wanted to make that?
No, just no. I enjoyed this very much. I mean, I'm ready to give it a rating if you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Do you want to rate first? Or do you want me to do it?
Sure. I'm gonna rate this 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
And I'm going to back this up. It was good. It was very good. But like I said, towards the end, they really started repeating. It got a bit repetitious, and I don't know. It stopped holding my interest at around part 6 until close to the end of part 7. So I thought it could have been shortened, but otherwise, it was a good story. But I can't rate it as high as a 4, just because I don't think it's as good as some of the other ones that I've rated that high.
Okay. All right. So 3.5 out of 5.
3.5 out of 5 for me, yeah.
Okay, well, I am going to give it a 4. I'm going to give it a 4 for a couple reasons. Well, first of all, it is long, so that does hurt it. But I was able to sit and watch it all the way through without any distraction, without any sense of being bored whatsoever. I also I think that it was, with what they had to work with, I think they did a very good job with how it was shot, how it was how the job the actors did, I think, was very good as well. The story is excellent, considering I think it still holds up. The fact that the story is, well, let's see, I'm 44, so this one has to be 47 years old. So I think the story holds up well. I like the characters. Each one is engaging. I felt for the Thals. I understood the Daleks. So yeah, all in all, and just kind of going back to, I'm kind of going against what I said earlier when I was responding to Mark's email about trying to stay in the moment with the DVD. But this story means so much to Doctor Who as a whole that I think that's kind of weighing my rating a little bit toward a 4. If I was going to knock anything off of it, it would be length, and also what we're going to be talking about next, which are the DVD extras, which aren't very good, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4 out of 5. All right, we'll be right back with DVD extras. But before we do that, we're introducing a brand new segment today on Who, a contribution by a good friend of the show and one of our listeners, Dr. Phil, who's going to be talking to us a little bit about the music associated with this episode of Doctor Who called The Daleks.
Welcome aboard, but hold on tight. These Type 40s are not predictable. Inputting coordinates and activating the scanner. Everything's just about set, and we're off! Dr. Phil here again for another series of adventures in time, space, and music. Going from the evocative music of Peter Howell, in my previous segment, we get to look at the time capsule of contemporary music spanning various schools of composition in the 1960s. In this segment, we will sample music by Doctor Who composer Tristram Cary, specifically 2 very different scores, The Daleks of 1963 and The Missing Story, The Daleks Master Plan of 1966. Composer Tristram Ogilvie Cary was born the 14th of May in 1925 in Oxford in the United Kingdom, and was the third son of novelist Joyce Cary. During World War II, Cary served in the Royal Navy as a radar operator. Here he encountered modern German tape equipment, leading to his experiments with recorded sound. After studies of piano, viola, and horn, he continued to experiment in electronic composition. By the mid to late 1950s, Cary was earning a living as a composer for film, radio, and theater, not to mention concert works from many various combinations and compositional styles, from traditional orchestral and choral works to chamber and solo works. This doesn't even begin to cover his musique concrète works for analog tape, namely the suite The Japanese Fisherman in 1955 and A Study in Limited Resource in 1967. Also, he composed later for computer, including his Nonette of 1979, Soft Walls of 1980, and many, many others. These works ranged from synthetic as well as mixed works for live performers and electronic sounds, demonstrating his flexibility and versatility in every compositional medium he worked in. Cary worked on many occasions for the BBC, and in 1963 he made a significant impact creating the atmosphere and soundscape that brought the Daleks to the screen. In Doctor Who, Cary composed scores for the 1963 serial The Daleks, that music also appeared in The Rescued, Marco Polo of 1964, The Daleks Master Plan of 1966, The Gunfighters of 1966, The Ark, and many, many others. During this era, soundtracks were often pre-composed and played into the studio as the show was being recorded. This probably added extra opportunities and challenges for all of the composers who worked on early Doctor Who. Later, Tristram Cary founded the Royal College of Music Electronic Studio in 1967, where he composed the soundtrack for the Hammer films Quatermass and The Pit. In 1969, he continued his innovations and founded the Electronic Music Studios with Peter Zinoviev and David Cockerell, who, along with Cary, developed the VCS-3 synthesizer, an instrument popularized by Pink Floyd, Brian Eno, and others. During a tour of Australia in the mid-1970s, Cary settled in Adelaide, Australia, taking a one-year senior lecturer position at the university, which lasted for about 12 years, when he retired and returned to composing. In 1991, Cary received the Medal of the Order of Australia for services to Australian music. Cary wrote extensively on classical music and opera as a music critic for The Australian, and the University of Adelaide presented Cary with an honorary doctorate in music in 2001. In 2005, he also received a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Adelaide Critics Circle. Tristram Cary unfortunately passed away on the 24th of April 2008 in Adelaide, South Australia. Now on to the music from Doctor Who, beginning with the Daleks. The music from this first 7-part story of the Hartnell era, the Daleks, does not disappoint dramatically, and neither does the music. I recall the first time I saw the story how much I thought the so-called low-budget special effects worked really well in black and white. With a menacing soundtrack, I would put the Daleks up there as a classic amongst any science fiction stories. Ian Chesterton's description of the Daleks of dislike of the unlike really sums up the strengths of early Terry Nation scripts for me. A sort of Nazi theme that will play out in even more stunning glory in the Tom Baker story Genesis of the Daleks, but that's a story for later. Creepy and foreboding, this purely electronic score really sells Doctor Who as a science fiction show in the early 1960s, with the opening music accompanying the petrified forest. The music may seem inaccessible and non-thematic to most, but it thoroughly is effective in setting the mood of this story. The track entitled The Daleks is archetypal in its power to create discomfort and a feeling of menace. Now we'll look at the Dalek Master Plan. This epic serial, now lost in its televised format, is an important part of Doctor Who's history, so I thought it might be appropriate to comment on the music of this story here. In addition to electronics, this serial also incorporates a wider sound palette of orchestral instruments, ranging from brass instruments, flute, trumpet, double reeds, vibraphone, timpani, orchestral bells, as well as solo cello. Cinematically, this score seems to owe more to the avant-garde chamber music of the 60s than it does to the previous story's electronic-only score, therefore creating a soundscape more akin to the Planet of the Apes film than the sweeping symphonic-esque sounds of Peter Howell, or the much more melodic Dudley Simpson scores of the 1970s. At times, the scoring also evokes the quality of sound effects, and is impressive when looking at the performance level of contemporary music of the 1960s. Some of the textures are even reminiscent of the sound masses of Frank Zappa's favorite composer, Edgar Varese, who was very much a pioneer in concert music as the electronic music in the first half of the 20th century. This score is truly brave, rhythmic, and experimental, and is indeed a pity that after all these years, we don't have this serial. The music alone inspires me to seek out a telesnap reconstruction of this story. Tristram Cary's music appears in compilation in the 2000 BBC music release Doctor Who at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop Volume 1 The Early Years, 1963 to 1969, including music from the Daleks and the Daleks Master Plan. Additionally, there's a 2003 BBC release on Doctor Who Devil's Planets, the music of Tristram Cary. This includes all of his music from Doctor Who, minus the music from the Lost Story from Season 1 Marco Polo, as well as the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon from the Gunfighters, which found a commercial release later. The To Entertain Doctor Who Beginnings box set features a 13-minute documentary, Masters of Sound, looking at the development of the Doctor Who theme and music production in the earliest days of the show. Kevin Davies produced this feature using unused interviews filmed from the BBC video release of More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS in 1994. Quite an excellent documentary, definitely worth buying the set just for that. Many of Tristram Carey's concert works can still be found on the internet on compact disc as well as in MP3 form, especially Soundings, Electroacoustic Works 1955 to 1996, as well as his Dictionary of Musical Technology and Illustrated Companion of Musical Technology, both published in 1992. If you enjoyed this podcast segment, please feel free to send in any additional thoughts, feedback, corrections here to the podcast. If you'd like to find out more about my other projects, specifically on vials, please visit thegambacast.org or contact me directly at philip@philipwsurner.com.
Thank you, Dr. Phil, for that interesting insight into the great incidental music that we are so privileged to hear in Doctor Who. And now, without any further ado, I think it's time for Marty and I to discuss DVD extras.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Like I was saying, before, there just aren't a lot of DVD extras here.
I was surprised how many extras there actually were. There weren't that many.
Yeah, I agree with you. Surprised in a bad way because it seemed like there should be more.
This is part of a box set though, so maybe that's
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. This is part of the Doctor Who: The Beginnings box set that also includes An Unearthly Child in a separate case, and in this case there's a double disc. It's the Daleks and the Edge of Destruction, which is the next story, which takes place entirely inside the TARDIS. Good story too, by the way.
Right.
But a couple of interesting extras, so we will cover those real quick for you. First one being Creation of the Daleks. That seems to be pretty much a given that they were going to at least have some sort of documentary on that.
I would hope so.
They talked to Richard Martin. They talked to Verity Lambert, who Doctor Who fans will know is the producer. Richard Martin was the gentleman who directed the last part of this adventure. It was started by Christopher Barry. He wanted to move on to a different project, I think about 4 episodes in to the 7-parter, and so Richard Martin took over. So they talked to Richard Martin. They talked to Raymond Cusick, who is obviously the designer of the Daleks. Michael Somerton, who was a Dalek operator at the time. Brian Hodgson, who designed the Dalek voice. He was with Radiophonic Workshop. And then David Graham, who was a voice artist, who actually did the. I think that was before. Oh God, I'm drawing a total blank here. Nicholas Briggs. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I was going to say Phil Briggs. It didn't make any sense. I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on with me today, folks. It's because Marty's not here in the room with me. That's what it is.
It's weird. There's nobody to look at. I'm just staring at my computer monitor.
So. Anyway, but yeah, before Nicholas Briggs. So this is David Graham, who we should give a certain tip of the hat to because he was the first person to voice the Daleks, and
he was the first Dalek.
Pretty good. So anyway, they basically talked about the design, about the where they got their inspiration from, how they put them together, that sort of thing, and I went from there. So what'd you think?
I thought it was pretty good, documentary-wise. It's not the best documentary I've ever seen, Doctor Who-wise. But it was still pretty good.
It's obvious when you watch this disc that this was done. They've really stepped up their game as far as the quality of documentaries in the later releases, but this was one of the earlier releases to the DVDs, and so this was good for what we were getting at the time, and and still kind of nice, and it's nice to see Verity Lambert on screen, as well as she does the commentary too, but we'll talk about that in a minute. There was also a photo gallery, which I thought was kind of nice. There were some color photos, which is kind of cool because you get to see what they're wearing in color, since you're not going to see that on screen. And there were a couple of photos of people visiting the set, and William Hartnell not in his doctor wig. They should have let him just not wear the doctor wig. I think he
wore a wig.
Oh yeah, the long hair's a wig. Yeah, the long hair's a wig.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah. Huh. Yeah, I think the hair was still about the same color, so I don't know why they didn't.
What did it look like outside of the wig?
It's just short. It's just not short like me short, but
it wasn't like bald.
No. It was probably about your length. So I don't know. I don't know what the story is behind them.
People have no frame of reference. I don't think anybody's seen me off the air.
Well, they've seen your pictures on Facebook, and the cartoon pictures are pretty close as far as how long your hair is. So, but anyway, if anybody has any insight as to why they chose to put Hartnell in a wig,
I'd imagine it'd be the same reason why they chose to put Paul McGann in a wig. Just for appearance-wise.
Yeah, I think, and I could be wrong on this, I'm not sure this story is apocryphal, but I think Paul McGann had his head not shaved, but his hair was cut like Christopher Eccleston short for another role when he got the Doctor. And so by then, when he got there, they were like, no, that's not going to work. And so I think that was part of the reasoning behind the wig.
I think generally he just keeps his hair short because he doesn't like long hair.
Well, it could be.
I think that was something to do with it because I know if you look at pictures of him, his hair is very short.
Yeah, it is now. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, well, so we have the photo gallery. We have the commentary, which we'll talk about a little bit. The commentary is not on every chapter.
It's on 3 episodes.
Right. So you start with part 2. It's Gary Russell as serving as sort of a moderator. You got Verity Lambert and Christopher Berry. They talk a lot about the history of the Daleks, the history of Verity Lambert trying to get this particular adventure on air because it was the only one that was ready at the time. And Sidney Newman was not happy with the Daleks because he said that he had that firm policy of no bug-eyed monsters, and unfortunately, he felt the Daleks were bug-eyed monsters. So, but thankfully, he was wrong, and that was a good thing. And then, episode 4, which I really enjoyed because it had still had Gary Russell, had William Russell who played Ian, Carol Ann Ford who played Susan, Christopher Berry, the director, and that was a lot of fun because there was a lot of insight there into, them reminiscing about, shooting. It's just like, when any of the other, main actors are on there. And Carol Ann Ford at one point brings up a very interesting point that even though the show is called Doctor Who, in its early days, it was really more the Ian show than it was anything else because he was the heroic lead. He was the guy that would do the fighting and storm the door. In the Crusades, he was knighted and wielded a sword. And all that stuff. And so he got to do all the action stuff. So. But it was interesting, and it was a real good commentary. And then part 7, they're all back, except Christopher Berry has stepped out, and Richard Martin's come in because he was directing by that point. So we get a little bit of insight into Richard Martin as well. So all in all, a decent commentary, not 4-star commentary, but still enjoyable if you've seen this episode 100 times and you want to get a little inside information and all, and just kind of be a fly on the wall. It's fun to listen to, and like most people know, I watch the infotext usually when I'm listening to the commentary, and the infotext is good in this one. That is where I got the information on the jump in viewing figures and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things like them talking about when we see the Dalek out of the shell under the tarp, and they say, well, that's a crew member wearing a bear glove. And they did something to the glove. I forget what it was to make it look more alien, and little things like that. But it's fun. So yeah.
I think I missed out on the commentary and the info text.
Yeah, but yeah, fun. Yeah, and that's about it. I mean, I didn't pick up any.
Yeah, there really wasn't anything else. I don't know if there was an Easter egg.
No,
on here
not that I found. So
okay, because I think I tried to look for it and I didn't find.
No,
anything.
I went looking and I did not find. So, which is weird because then I just got the Black Guardian trilogy box set because of what we're going to be reviewing next, which is not the whole box set. But I watched Modern Undead because I love the Brigadier, and there's actually 2 Easter eggs on that one. So yeah.
Oh really?
So.
Oh, well, there you go. You missed out on one for Dalek, but you got 2 on Modern Undead.
I feel better now. So. Well, all right. So that brings us to a close of our review of the Daleks. Great episode. Highly recommend to folks to. You should have that box set. I mean, it's the beginning box set, so you should have.
It's the first 3 stories, so you really should. have it.
I mean, shame on you if you don't have it. You really need to go out there and get
it. I don't have
it. But anyway, we recommend it. Marty gave it a 3.5. I give it a 4. So in closing, let's talk about what's coming up for us here at Who on Who.
Next time we are doing Enlightenment from the Black Guardian box set. And what are we doing after that? I don't think, have we decided?
We haven't really decided. I think we're going to kind of leave it up in the air right now and figure out what we're doing because
I know we had talked about either doing Genesis or starting on the Key to Time box set.
Yeah, and I was also told I need to give a special shout out to Charles Milhouse and Charles Davenport, who are the hosts of the Neutron Flow podcast. It's not solely a Doctor Who podcast; it is a science fiction podcast. These guys cover the gamut. They do everything: Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, Doctor Who. But Charles Milhouse, who I affectionately call Chuck, is a big Doctor Who fan. He's written in here before, and he has encouraged me to pick up The Talons of Wang Chien. I've never seen it, but I have had several people tell me that it's very good. So that
is that another?
It's a Fourth Doctor one. So
okay. Well, all the ones that are on the air, up in the air right now, are Fourth Doctor episodes.
Well, I don't know. We'll talk off air and figure out what we're doing. But for now, we know we know we're doing Enlightenment. So Enlightenment will be next. Let's see what else. The Hingley boys have been quite busy, and they have actually launched their own website. It is www.titaniumbunker.com. You guys can go out there and see some of the fun and frivolity that they get into when we don't have them working like slaves for us. And they have actually created a game called Where in the World is Colin Baker? It's a Doctor Who trivia game. It's a lot of fun. It's very addictive. Be careful. If those guys turn that into an iPhone app, oh my goodness, that would be crazy. But anyway,
England Brothers, get on
that. But yeah, please check out titaniumbunker.com. We are still in the baby stages of getting voicemail set up. I got to get with Mike about a couple of things. I got to work out a couple more hurdles. Still trying to get the Who on Who swag shop opened up with new merchandise, T-shirts and cups and things like that. An idea that I just had, I hadn't even mentioned to Marty, was to take some of these show logos that people seem to really enjoy of he and I, and put those up as possible graphics for shirts and things.
I was working on a collage in Photoshop just in my spare time of the show logos we have had.
Oh, okay. All right.
Putting them together into just one big thing, like a wallpaper. I wasn't really planning on doing it as a T-shirt. But
well, no, I just thought, if somebody likes any particular, if you have a favorite Doctor Who story and we've reviewed it, and there's a cartoon of Marty and I doing something related to that, then if that's your pick for a T-shirt logo, I'm working out trying to give you the option to choose. Say you want to pick a certain style / color of shirt and which logo you want. kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm
the Warriors Gate one will probably sell the best.
with the Thundercats one. Yeah, I don't know. Wait till they see the Enlightenment one is pretty funny. I like that one too.
I still haven't seen the Enlightenment.
I know, shame,
yet.
but yeah. So we got a lot of feedback on the Invasion one because you and I are on there for real, and our cartoon counterparts are there, with us, and so they like that, and they also enjoyed the War Games one was also really good too.
Right, that's the first. That was the first one we did, or the first animated.
Yeah, it
one.
was. He I think we were going to just do a generic plate, and that's when he first said, "Oh no, I want to do a picture," and he sort of run with it.
It's worked out.
Yeah,
so.
I know. It's a lot of work for him, but he seems to really enjoy it. He comes up with some pretty clever ideas, and oftentimes what's the case is if it's a story I've never seen, I'll get the graphic and I'll go, okay, I wonder what that means. It's like Enlightenment. I've never seen Enlightenment, and so I've got the graphic here, and so I need to be on the lookout in the story when I'm watching it to see what he's referencing.
I think the most confusing one for me was, again, Warriors Gate, because it was Lion-O from Thundercats fighting K9.
Yeah, I thought that one. And I also like the vampire one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
State of Decay too. But anyway, folks, you can write Marty and I at feedback@whoonwho.com. We both check it there. You can also find us on Facebook. We have our Who on Who page on Facebook, or the Who on Who website, which is www.whoonwho.com. I was just recently on the Neutron Flow podcast as a guest, so please give that a listen. The podcast was basically about me. They wanted to find out, what sort of science fiction I like, and it was kind of nice. And I
don't think it's out yet. I think it's on its way out though.
Thank you. I hadn't a chance to check yet, but give that a listen if you don't mind. And Marty, anything else?
Well, also plug my movie reviews on Facebook, now showing reviews. I'm also going to be guest hosting a podcast, not anytime soon, but sometime in the fall. It's a podcast like the Neutron Flow podcast. It's called the Made of Fail podcast, and they are doing a Doctor Who episode at some point, and I wrote the host of the show after we dropped the exclusive, and he said he'd love to have me on, so at some point I'll be on there. So I'll keep everybody updated.
Good deal. Keep me updated. Yeah. I want to listen to it. So
okay. Yeah.
All right.
It's a bit more raunchy than this one, but
all right. Well, I won't listen to it in front of your mother. All right. Well, I think that brings us to a close then of episode 29 of Who on Who. Thank you, everyone, for listening, as always, and we will be seeing you next time when we cover Enlightenment. So take care.
All right. See you.